Mohit, appreciate your time, brother. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a while, so I'm honored to have you on the show. But I want to start by going back to the beginning of your career in investment banking. Like, what made you want to work in this space and more specifically work in the sports tech sector, where we're now seeing a lot of activity and movement?
hmm No, thanks for having me, and I'm glad we are able to chat here on your platform, which is I'm very excited about, and you had some really nice guests, and I'm delighted to be in that league now. So thank you for including me. Um, Coming to my career and how I started and why I do this, I mean, honestly, the biggest and most important one is I'm just a sports fan you know so when it comes down to that, it's like you're doing what you love as your profession. It just makes a ton of sense in your life. So I mean, I belong to obviously India, as that's my birth country, and grew up in a family where business was the epicenter of everything. So my dad had a distribution business into tea and spices. Doesn't get more Indian than that. Um, and I was involved in that from childhood. Like we were doing all things school and sports and everything, but it was always another thing that I was very involved in. And as soon as I went to college and high school, I was actually an active member managing the business. And that created a lot more excitement for me to kind of look at businesses in different lenses and how founders really work their asses off, sorry for the French, and create a very meaningful product and service that they really are passionate about. And that really drives me into this whole advisory ecosystem. So then did all my education and everything in MBA and the CFA, and then landed a job at an advisory firm and just fell in love from day one because now I get to do what I was doing for pretty much all my life and advise people and help them get to where they want to. So that's really the ideation of why I'm into advisory. And then sport just being I'm just a sports fan. Big problem for my wife because every week I'm watching some other sport and she's like now this and that. But ultimately that makes me a great enabler where I understand what's happening in the market and I can perhaps give them a little bit of advice to see where how they can achieve the goals they want. So that's the origination. Right now, I'm at Drakestar. It's a FINRA registered dealer, broker dealer, an investment bank that focuses on tech, sports, and media deals. It's a large platform for over 100 people across US, Europe, and Asia. New York is our headquarters. I'm here in the LA office with a bunch of other people, and then we got people all across the Europe and a partner office in Asia. So that's how the setup is. Roughly 30 senior members who focus on their own verticals within technology, and I focus on sports, gaming, and media, which is 100% of my time goes into sports and media, as these are two kind of very intertwined industries where they go both hand in hand. So that's about Drakestar. We can talk about some of the deals we have done, but we kind of touch
Absolutely.
upon fans, athletes, and the management side of things. These are the three key pillars of the sports ecosystem. So, for instance, we would do a deal like Spike Trap that you sold to Reddit. That's an audience and fan AI business that did a lot of segmentation, content, sentiment analysis, and Reddit at that point was just looking for something to give it to their advertisers and fans to really provide that meaningful insight. And that was the deal that made a lot of sense for them, and they paid a really interesting price for it. And then you
Yeah.
look at the athlete side of things, peak performance, right? That's what we always want. And Speedeo is a platform where we raised a growth capital round for them end of last year. And their performance analytics business focuses on athlete performance, primarily more into, youth and elite collegiate sports side. So they're actually trying to solve the grassroots problem of
hmm
giving these budding athletes a platform to understand how they're performing, but at the same time, bringing the ecosystem a little bit enhanced in capacity of how do you stream and how do you analyze. So that was and then they use a lot of AI. Obviously, AI is a keyword in this market,
Yep.
and there is a lot going on. So that was that, and then you talk about the distribution side of it. You talk about the management side of things, and then we sold a business called Wild Mocha to Backlight, which is a PSG owned, platform that focuses on media streaming and distribution. So those are some of the key deals. We have done over 500 deals. And, one of the last deals I did that was more into the Hollywood side of things called Mobscene that we sold to a media tech platform out of Asia. And this is a large, highly renowned brand into the Hollywood scheme of things where they work with pretty much all the studios and media companies to do content marketing for them. So those are some of the things we do so deeply embedded into sports and media and technology ecosystem.
For sure. No, I appreciate the context. And when you look at sports technology as a vertical, as an industry, I would say it's still very nascent. Like we're still in the early stages
Mhm.
of the growth potential of this sector. So for you, two questions. What do you think has contributed to this boom that we're seeing in sports technology? And also, was there any particular deal that you did that was like, oh, there's really something here and there's so much upside and potential left to grow?
Mhm. No, I think I echo your comment about the market being in a nascent stage, which provides a lot of opportunity for people to come in with their innovative solutions, bringing technology to elevate the whole sports ecosystem, right? The ecosystem obviously is transforming, right? So you have performance tools for elite athletes to full spectrum solution for fan engagement, talk about youth sports, talk about some of the new leagues that are challenging, the traditional ways of doing sports and distribution. And then you talk about immersive experiences. Cosm is doing a phenomenal job, and that just creates a new way of, interacting and going to events. So there is a lot that is going on, and all this is driven by technology and the fact that sports is the most red hot sector in this market at this point.
Hmm.
You talk about geopolitical tensions, you talk about, tariff wars going on, and you talk about, some instability around the world. But one thing that connects everyone is sports. And then sports has been more of a trophy asset, right? When you talk about 80s and 70s and 90s, where you have these billionaires buying teams and leagues, primarily teams, and just using them as like a high society investment opportunities, although they always made money on that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the most important part is sports as an investment vehicle is just always going to give you very interesting returns. So you talk about, Celtics selling it for 6.1 billion. That was until, the 49ers deal happened, was the biggest deal. And then the 49ers and Niners sell the minority equity for 8.5 billion. I think that
Yeah.
was the number. So but these are two different deals, right? The Celtics one is a full sale at 6.5, while the other one is a minority. The York family selling it to Koslas and few others. So there is a difference, but that tells you that how much there is at the highest level in sports.
Hmm.
Then you come down and you talk about, hey, this is all great. You talk about NFL, NBA, everything, and you talk about Kings League, Baller League, but what is really happening at the grassroots level, and how do you elevate that from a fan standpoint, from athlete standpoint, and just how do you manage an event and how do you really get someone to come to an event where today's youth is more about playing video games, staying on Instagram,
Yeah.
and not trying to get out of their comfort zone. So you how do you drive that fan engagement? And this is where all the sports tech ecosystem is helping sports get there. I think the industry
Yeah.
sports tech is around 35, 40 billion. Um, Youth sports is around 40 billion. So, but that's the whole youth sports, and there is a technology coming in. So, Peter at Team Snap, he's driving great amount of innovation into the youth sports category, right? And then you talk about Speedeo, that again goes into the youth sports segment. Uh, you know, Team Snap also acquired Mojo, right? So Mojo is a B2C platform where you go and create content. So there are different ways of looking at the ecosystem, like, but some of these examples are just the great way of how, technology is driving that innovation. And this is why there is so much happening in the sports ecosystem, especially at the sports tech and the ground level side.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, at Drake Star, you guys focus on the industry from a global perspective, but a lot of that focus is here in the US. But if you look at regions outside of that, we're seeing a lot of growth in India, certain parts of Europe, Australia has a pretty strong sports tech scene. What regions are you or countries are you most bullish on or seeing a lot of M&A activity around in today's, world?
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So thank you for asking. And I would say, the interesting regions when you talk about the market which is most advanced and, let's say, a little bit more mature than others, it's going to be the US market.
Hmm.
But when you talk about a lot more activity and emergence, that's going to be Asia, because you just think about the scale that people are operating at. At some point, EPL was the biggest, club and league in the world. We talk about NFL, I mean, Super Bowl being the biggest ever event in the sports market. But has anyone seen the IPL events? Those are just massive events. The whole league or tournament just spans across more than a month of activities every single day, and perhaps the finals for that event pretty much equals the kind of attendance and the viewership we get at Super Bowl.
Hmm.
But the issue is the monetization of things, right? So the economic value for, other than the organizers and streaming rights, right? That's the big difference. So in the US markets, there's always going to be more activity because the market is a bit mature. There are larger players who are looking at technology as the key part to grow their platforms and make it more strategic, as compared to somewhere like in Asia, where in India you have a big event in IPL, but the technology is still trying to get there. So the ecosystem for sports technology businesses in the US is far more mature than India, because you got IPL, but there are few that are supporting the IPL and trying to create different ways of addressing things and creating more content, getting more innovation. But that's still at a very nascent stage, but growing at a really, really fast pace, because the scale that it provides, the amount of opportunity, the amount of audience you get, and the amount of problems that you're getting to solve is just much bigger. So that's where the markets are. I mean, Europe obviously is a key market when you talk about sports. All the Middle Eastern money going into these soccer clubs is definitely an indication that there is a lot more happening in that space. There are companies who are doing really, really interesting things like player data. You talk about Curve, who's doing really interesting work on the ski instruction and it's essentially just teaching people how to ski and where to ski. So those are some of the businesses that are interesting. But when you talk about maturity and more deal making, it's the US market. But I think there is a bigger market wave going to come in Indian markets and adjacent, ecosystems around there.
Yeah, so I guess to that point as well, is like, what do you think is going to take for these industries to, I guess, reach the potential of a US? Is it just more technological innovation? Is it more structure, more investment, all of the above? Like, what are your thoughts on like what needs to happen for these other regions or other countries to reach the same potential as the US?
I think it really comes down to, the top level. When you talk about the US markets, we just we just have private equities investing minority into NFL. That happened very recently,
Hmm.
right? So that is going to create a domino effect where these institutional equity folks who are looking at NFL and these leagues as an investment vehicle that is going to bring more, I would say, institutionalization of the whole event, right? Until now, people were just focused on media rights as a way to get in into the sports leagues and teams. And now there is a bigger direct investment that happens. Obviously, these are only select players, but they have bottomless pits, so they can invest a lot of money. And then for them to realize that investment and also to get a greater return, they need to elevate the three pillars, right? So you need to create world-class stadiums, you need to create the right experience for the fans, and you need to make sure that they go to those events. And then you need to have the highest level of performance coming from athletes.
Yep.
So that is the basic borderline for all sports across different industries and different geographies. So when you talk about India as a market like IPL, I think these are some of the finest athletes out there. So you look at how cricket was played like a gentleman's game back in 80s or 5 day of test crickets that everyone in the US kind of bashes to now these 6 hour events where you can go 20 hours played and these are high performance athletes who have the best physique, best stamina and best skills out there performing at the highest level. So there is already a lot that is going into that athlete side where all the teams that are competing at the highest level are going to need that technology innovation to outscore the other side, saying, "Hey, how do I make sure my Patrick Mahomes is ready in cricket, right? Someone like him, like Virat Kohli. Like, how do
Yeah.
I make sure he's performing at the peak and right before a crunch game, he's not he's not at 100%." And then you talk about the fan side of things, going into stadiums. Like you're talking about millions of people going into one stadium, and it's a mess. I can tell you, it's a big mess. People have to be in lines for 5 hours.
That's
Even
crazy.
if there is no COD, they're going to get in. And how do you enable this seamless process of people getting in and getting out? So there is things that are already happening, but it has to come from the top, like where all these, leagues and organizations need to think about how do I increase my LTV on my fans, right?
Yeah.
Right now, the biggest problem is who's your fan? Half the people don't know. And the people who know, they can't do much because they don't know how to do it. And for some that are doing, it's working well, right? Ryan Reynolds investing in that club was obviously a master stroke, and then he has elevated the whole platform,
Yeah.
right? Like media rights are coming, more people are coming to the event, and they're performing because there's money going into it. So I think overall, it's already starting to trickle in, but there is a lot more that these guys need to do. And there are people who are trying to solve those problems. These are real fans who are creating their own businesses, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go take money from Rand Sports Ventures, Will Ventures, or go to Sapphire or go to Elysian Park, and go and get that amount of funding, or go to Bobby at Bluestone and say, hey, I have this interesting business that I've scaled to a level. Now I need the next level of capital."
Hmm.
And you know, those guys who have come out of these sports leagues and organizations understand the sports ecosystem a lot more than others. So it's happening, but it's going to take a little bit longer because the monetization is the biggest challenge, right?
Yeah.
In the US, you're willing to pay the amount of money that's needed to get to a stadium. I mean, the ticket prices difference between here to the emerging markets is a way, way, way different, but still those prices are not attainable for a very regular fan,
Hmm.
right? Another example would be Manu now doing their own merchandising, right? Like working with these other bigger sports brands like Nike and Adidas, those jerseys are cost you like $120.
Yeah.
Do you think a normal, you know, hand to mouth guy who's a big fan can afford that jersey?
Mm.
Probably not. So now they are doing their own merchandising and launching their own line for a $30 price. And that $30 is more attainable, right? So there are ways you are trying to segment that out. And then loyalty management, who your fans are, where are the seasonal tickets, who gets them, who gets the merchandise, right? Fans are always associating themselves with a team or a club because there is sentiment value. And it happens, I think, when you're like 4 or 5 or 6, when
Yeah,
you really decide which club or team you're going to follow, and that stays with you for pretty much your whole life, right? Not everyone is like me who likes every single sport out there. There are people who would dismiss Formula One, right? It's like, okay, I don't like that sport because it just cars going in on a circuit, and person who has the best car wins all the time. But there is a lot more to it. There is a bigger technology mode that's coming into Formula One. I think that's the most, tech intensive sports out there. Um, people will bash me for calling it sports, half of them, but it is a sport.
yeah. No,
So
absolutely.
sorry, I went into some tangent, but I think it's happening. It's going to take time. There is more capital coming into this ecosystem, and then there are people who come from the organizations are now leading those charges of putting money into these, growing companies that are going to now solve this problem going forward. So I think in 5 years, I think we're going to see a completely different way of how people interact between, let's say, fans and teams, and like just experience of going to an event, and the experience and the attachment after the event for a week is just going to be very different.
For sure. No, that's really good insight. I appreciate that. And I want to get back to the work that you guys are doing at Drake Star for a minute and talk about the M&A side. For people who don't understand um, kind of what this looks like from a buy or sell side, what actually makes a sports tech deal attractive to someone who's looking for that type of opportunity?
Hmm. Great question again. And I think it's actually a key question for these founders who are building these great companies. Uh, but great companies may not be a great M&A target for someone. Great companies may take a lot longer to get acquired or get funded, because I think honestly, huge respect for every single founder who's hustling out there and trying to create a product or service. And that is the key problem, is a lot of times when these founders are so passionate and driven, they are focused on just the bigger picture of creating this world-class product and service, that they may not be institutionalizing their business,
Mm,
right? Like the first and foremost would be, you know, are your financials clean? Right? Do you have them in the right way that you need to have them? So when someone looks at your business, ultimately people are going to look at the numbers that you have, and you need to make sure your financials are checked, your financials are ready, your financials are as per the book. Um, I'm not saying that you are doing something wrong with them, but there are ways to look at them, and there are ways people would want to see them. So that's the number one, is how do you institutionalize your accounting and finance? Because someone from outside is always going to come and understand where's the money coming from.
yeah.
The second one would be the team, right? We work with, these bootstrap founder-led businesses as well as these VC institutionalized businesses, and there is a strong difference. But at the same time, the deals can be very different. So for a bootstrap founder-led business, where we take great pride in helping them, there is a lot of work that goes before we take that deal to market. They may not have a right team structure in place, where this founder is punching above his weight and may not have the right team to support him. And then anyone who's looking to acquire that business is always looking for a succession planning, and they don't see anyone else picking that up. And there is no one else who has the institutional knowledge to run that business. Once the founder says, "Hi, hey, I've done my part, and now I need to go do something else more interesting."
Yeah.
So team composition, legal stuff obviously always comes up. Have you, structured your business in the right way? Do you have your contracts done well? So it always helps to pay a little bit more, um, you know, prudently just doing some of these things. And just operationally, if you are not there as a founder or the founder team, then how does the business survive? Like separating the business away from the founder and saying, hey, this is my business which can run without needing me on 100% basis is one of the key challenges that these small businesses always face. So we get involved. Obviously, it's a process depending anywhere from, we can sell a business in 3 months to a year, depending on how ready they are. And then we get involved. We coach them. I mean, full respect. I mean, we don't coach them on what they're building, but just coaching them on, how do we get this set up in the right way so people don't have problems when we go to market. And this all kind of goes into three, four different directions. And another one will be, just being ready about the process, right? People are going to come ask you questions. There's going to be someone who's going to be your boss once the deal is done. Are you ready to take those, orders? Are you ready to work with someone who have a little bit more, let's say, monetization driven approach?
Hmm.
Right? You cared about building a community, you cared about building a product, and now someone comes in and is like, hey, I want to look at what's your go-to market. Are you leaving money on the table? Can we change that? So these are some of the key things that we generally come across with when working with these founders and really, really, intelligent people who know what they're doing. But these are some of the key challenges that we try to solve. I'm not saying none of this is not solvable, but it just depends on, what the intensity at which you are going. If you're going 100 miles an hour, we can always go 120 miles an hour and fix things and get you out there. If you want to go 50 miles an hour, is it good for me? Probably not. I won't always go at 100 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I
for
hope I'm
sure.
answering this question probably.
No, that was it was really good advice, man. Really good advice. We got a couple more questions before we wrap up here. Obviously, we talked a lot about the subsectors within sports tech, whether that's performance or fan engagement. Um, if you look at the global ecosystem of sports and you had to bet on one of those subsectors for the next decade, what sector would that be and why?
Ooh, it's a
It's a tough
really hard
question.
question.
I'll give you two
Okay.
sectors.
Two sectors. And these sectors are like what kind of sectors? Can I pick something like fan driven and athlete driven, or it has to be like one subsector within those sectors?
Uh, it can be athlete driven, fan driven. It can even be like women's sports. Like it's hard to really define this
Yes.
ecosystem. I
Thank you.
find myself struggling to define it. So I would say, let's say two concepts within sports that you are really bullish on the
Hmm.
next decade.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would say, AI and data analytics,
Hmm.
um, in both fan experience and athlete, like load management is
Yeah.
like one of the things which I'm very excited about. Um, it's a big market, right? Fan experience at this point needs a lots and lots of innovation to remove all the kinks out of it. So when we talk about investing in infrastructure like 5G, IoT, AR, VR experiences, all this is driven by AI and data. So
Hmm.
AI and data helping fan experience, and then athlete performance and recovery and load management is one of the things I'm very excited about. And the second one will be women's sports. I think it's by far going to be the most exciting asset in next 5 years. I think we're looking at what 2 billion plus in the market size already. Like, and we are very, very early. There is aerial investments, Jason is a great guy. They're looking at this as one industry, right? I mean, Unrivaled just raised 120 million from
Yeah.
Dix and Dynasty guys, great guys. They know what they're doing, and they won't put money into something which has a very strong women's angle. Um, So I think these are the two verticals where I'm very, very excited about. And women's sports as just one industry, which I think has progressed so much, and it's still very early, you know,
Hmm.
like when you talk about um, I would pick another one too, but let me finish this one is um, there is so much that was left on the table because it was always very focused on man, right? And now we are starting to see a lot more innovation, a lot more acceptance on the highest level to say, hey, let's do this. And now you start seeing, fans trickling in, you start seeing in engagement coming up, digital media deals being struck. So I think I'm very, very excited about that. And I would say youth sports as a vertical within sports is just immense. I think it's $40 billion in size, and you're gonna fuel the next generation of talent, next generation of Tom Brady's and
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes and Travis's, and it just makes a ton of sense. And there is a lot more innovation. Like honestly, back in the day, my days, I don't think I ever had anyone stream my games or anyone even have. I don't think anyone has footage of me playing any games, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say I'm very old. Uh, but now parents have access to every single session their kids have played. I have a 2-year son now who might be coming out now as he's a little late getting up, but it's 4th of July, so it's fine. Uh,
Yeah, let them sleep
and
in.
I know that I'm gonna be recording every single session he's playing with the kind of technology that is at play. Baller TV, Speedeo, Real Player, guys here in LA doing really interesting job. These are some of the things I'm very excited in the youth sports. Then NIL comes in, right?
Hmm.
And there is this whole ecosystem building up, and I'm very excited. I mean, you can just see I'm so pumped about it.
Yeah. No, this has been great, Mohit, man. I always learn a ton from you and love our conversations and appreciate your passion for this space. Can you let everybody know where they can learn more about you, what you guys are doing at Drake Star and connect with you?
No, absolutely. And again, thank you for inviting me on this platform. You're building something very, very interesting, and I mean, I learn a lot from you every time I talk to you or I meet you. We gotta sync up and meet and get some drinks sometime very soon.
Absolutely.
Uh, but you can always come to our website or reach me on my LinkedIn, which is very easily findable, or email me at my email, which is mohit.pareek@drakestar.com. We are here to help, the sports and media ecosystem get to the next level with all the mid-market M&A deals and growth financings. Even if you are looking for smaller raises, happy to help enable any connections that are possible in the space. So I'm just here as a fan, trying to trying to consume and also contribute.
My man. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you. Welcome for this. Appreciate it.